Hello and welcome to video 3 in the series. This one's about the job guarantee. We've learnt that the government has a range of conditions that enable spending, with tax offsets and unutilised capacity being some important examples. If a modern monetary economics following government was elected, the first thing it should be doing is using that spending power to enable everyone who wants to work to have it. This scheme is known as a job guarantee. When I have talked to people in Australia about the job guarantee, they often ask, is it like Work for the Dole, which is a scheme where participants do training in workplaces or in workplace-like environments to increase their skills, and in return they satisfy criteria which ensures they keep getting unemployment payments. In short, the job guarantee is the most opposite thing possible to Work for the Dole. You couldn't get two more different schemes, and I'll explain why this is towards the end of the video. First, we're going to have a look at the problems of the existing economic setup of employment and why that can never achieve full employment. Then we'll look at how we can get around these problems and have a system where full employment can be attained without causing problems with things in the economy. Lastly, we'll run over some simple characteristics of the version of the job guarantee that is supported by the majority of modern monetary advocates. Okay, let's look at some problems with the existing setup. So here we have two businesses and some unemployed people out the front. There are people employed in the businesses, as indicated by little figures inside the boxes in the businesses. There are some boxes which are empty. This is a vacant position in the business. Let's fill up our vacancies with some of the unemployed people. Righto, all the positions are filled, but there are still some unemployed people. In this situation, the employed people can't really put much pressure on the business to increase wages, because there's still unemployed people out there who want a job and would be willing and happy to work at the wages currently being offered in the businesses. Let's say the economy starts going really well though, then more positions open up in our businesses. The unemployed people fill up the vacant spots, but there are still unfilled positions. So then business 2 gets a bright idea. It decides to up the wages being paid to make the positions more attractive and get some employees to fill those positions from other companies if necessary. It manages to attract some people from Business 1 and it fills up its positions. Business 1 is now more desperate for employees, so it increases its wages even more than what Business 2 did. This is wage inflation in action. This is all fine until wages take up too much of the business's costs, and then profits fall, and then the businesses have to start putting people off or risk going out of business. Now we're right back where we started again. What tends to happen in practice is, rather than cycle between lower and higher employment, the economy usually sits at a level of employment where wages growth sits in a zone companies are comfortable with. In developed countries, this ranges from 4 to 6% unemployment. The only way we could stop wage inflation in a low unemployment situation is to regulate wages in some way. For example, limit pay increases that employees can demand, or somehow limit the wage increase a person gets when they change jobs. But this defeats the purpose of having a free market in wages, where people can get the wages proportional to their skills and where businesses are free to choose which skill level they attract via the wages they offer. Okay, so just to be super clear about the current system, it does not matter how educated, skilled or motivated the population is, it cannot attain full employment with this setup. You will not get full employment with this setup. So if every person, including every unemployed person in Australia, all had 2 uni degrees, 2 trades, a range of additional work skills such as experience in hospitality and retail, plus was fit, energetic and motivated off their chops, everybody wouldn't have a job. There would still be unemployment. I guess another way of putting it is that it is impossible not to have unemployment in this current setup. The current system requires unemployment or it will not work. With the public I have spoken to, they strongly hold the belief that it is lazy people that won't get jobs. That is the reason there is unemployment. There may well be the odd person that is unenthusiastic about working, but for each one of those, there is probably 20 or 30 people who would happily work but just can't get it. Anyway, let's just look at a graph of unemployment and just try and match it against this theory of laziness. So here is a graph of Australian unemployment over time. So we can see on the left hand side, we start off with 2% unemployment. Then we get to the 1974 and unemployment jumps by 2% in a quick time. Does this mean 2% of Australians just got really lazy all of a sudden? It's funny how this is right around the time of the first oil price shock, hey? Anyway, moving on, we see that between 1976 to 1978, the lazy Australians all of a sudden increased by 2% again. In 2 years, 2% of Australia just gets lazy. It's amazing that this just happens to correspond to when the second oil price shock is, but hey, what would I know? Next, between 1981 and 1983, we have a massive 4% leap in the laziness of Australians. What could be causing such laziness? Anyway, in an amazing turnaround in laziness, between 1983 and 1989, we have a 6-year period of decreasing laziness, and lazy people in the population dropped from 10% to 6%. What was the magic elixir in this period? We need to bottle that stuff and sell it. Anyway, for whatever reason, in the early 1990s, things take a turn for the worse again, and laziness increases again. It increases at 1% a year for 4 years, and ends up with lazy people constituting about 11% of the population. Anyway, I think by now you can see how absurd it is to attribute unemployment to laziness. Unemployment is a result of how many jobs are available, and that's a result of macroeconomic factors and nothing to do with laziness. Under the current system, you'll always have people for whom, as a populational group, getting a job is impossible. Please remember that this is the case, no matter how much politicians might seem or even be genuine in their attempts to get work or force the unemployed to work, there will be an amount for which this is impossible. Modern monetary economics gets around all these issues in a pretty clever way. It basically says, okay, we'll leave the employed part of the wages spectrum alone, so people can still get rewarded for their skills, etc. But then the question becomes, what can we do for the people at the bottom of the pile, the unemployed, to allow them to be employed on a wage, doing work, but not increasing inflation in the other group? Now, if you remember our footprint diagram from the second video, to get 100% employment means we have to use up the full column all the way up to the maximum capacity footprint. And we already discussed how this is normally difficult to do without inflation. Well, modern monetary economics says, right, what we'll do is the unemployed people need to be willing to put up with 2 conditions that stop inflation. And if they're willing to do that, we can give them employment with no risk of wage inflation in the rest of the economy. The first condition they need to accept is a fixed wage. That is, there's only one hourly rate everyone in the job guarantee gets. The wage is set level to the minimum wage. You could have a job guarantee where the wage was set below the minimum wage, but if you have it set level with the minimum wage, it puts pressure on the private sector to make sure their lowest wages jobs are still decent quality jobs, otherwise the workers will walk out and into the job guarantee. You can't set the job guarantee wage above the minimum wage, as that will cause voter outcry with the people who have minimum wage jobs in the private sector. Plus, it will encourage wage inflation, which will cause the private sector to shed jobs, and we're back defeating our own purpose. The second condition is a ceiling in the amount of hours any person in the job guarantee can do in a given time period. This is normally set at the standard 40 hours per week. The total pay a person receives is a function of the hourly rate and the amount of hours worked. The ceiling in hours limits the size of the job guarantee scheme, which limits the amount of money flowing into the economy and causing inflation in prices in the general economy. So this gives us the best of both worlds, a free market wages system for the private sector, and yet full employment as a whole without creating wage inflation issues. Now I want to run through a basic configuration of a job guarantee as per what most modern monetary economics advocates would advocate. The jobs are supplied locally where people live. There's no need to move away from family or network supports to get the work. They are locally administered. A group receives work requests or suggestions from the community and job requests from the various applicants and matches the two up. The job guarantee is not intended to be punitive. It is just meant to be a help. People can opt in or opt out with no penalties. They can customise when and how much work they do too. As I mentioned before, work is supplied by various bodies ranging from locals to government. There are certain work that people are not to do. Participants are not meant to be cheap, subsidised labour for the private sector or even existing public sector roles. The sort of work we anticipate being submitted is environmental repair and monitoring work, aesthetics improvements in the local communities, caring work, recycling, reuse, repurpose and waste prevention work, community improvement works, those sorts of things. Everyone of working age is eligible. Obviously, if you put in for the hours, you need to be able to work them. People will be able to nominate from 1 to 40 hours of work, plus preferred days and times, and this will be accommodated as much as possible. The job guarantee is to work with people, not against them. So it aims to match people's characteristics with the job characteristics as best as can be. So older persons won't be given real demanding physical work. Under the program, everyone gets access to all the normal conditions of work, like sick leave and superannuation. People are often a bit concerned about how this scheme might be paid for, and by extension worry that they'll have to be taxed extra to pay for it. Good news, the job guarantee can be paid for by new money spending, so without tax increases. That said, it should be, in my view, any government's first policy, and we should be willing for our taxes to pay for such an important policy. If implemented, the job guarantee would likely be one of the best returns on tax money ever tried. The benefits just in health and educational differences of the participants and their families would be massive, let alone the results of the work output. Something people wonder about a bit when they realise the job guarantee will be public funded is along the lines of, if it doesn't make money, is there any sense doing the work? The simple answer is yes. We already have many examples of this. Public hospitals, health practitioners and doctors are one example. Similarly, educators at all levels are another. To put it simply, there are many things that are good for society that the public isn't keen on buying, directly at least, and nor is the public too interested in gathering together to self-organise these things, especially when they already have built a government to do these things. There are many things that will be good for us to improve, from the environment to the aesthetics of our communities, to better recycling, reuse and waste prevention facilities, and to provide adequate care and inclusion for people in our society. Australians of all persuasions are very proud of the Snowy Mountain scheme and often refer to it as a benchmark achievement. It took 7,000 people over 25 years to complete. The workforce we have sitting idle currently, because we don't have a job guarantee scheme, is so big it would achieve, in man-hours terms, the same amount of work in just 4 months. Having that workforce sitting around, feeling worthless and excluded, does them no good either. It's a lose-lose-lose setup as it is. We have people sitting around and suffering because they're not working. We have important jobs for our society not being done, and we waste spending power that we built as a nation by not using these people up. That lost spending power doesn't go into a bank account or anything like that. That's not how it works at this level. It's just lost opportunity that is consigned to the winds of history. Once I learnt the job guarantee is not only possible for the economy, but a more optimal way to have it than it is how it is now, I felt I would be a moral disgrace and a community's disgrace if I did not advocate for it. I just hope others will feel the same and start to help me promote it. I said I'd do a comparison of the job guarantee with work for the dole. In work for the dole, it's all based on what we might call the personal theory of getting a job. A person can't get a job, so they go out and upskill themselves, and now they can get a job that they missed out on before. So the work for the dole expands this concept and applies it on the basis of what works for one should work for many. Except that, as we've found out, the overall unemployment rate isn't to do with the skills of individual people, it's to do with the amount of jobs in the economy. So work for the dole may result in employment, it also may not. The work for the dole scheme does nothing to put jobs where the unemployed are. So depending on a person's circumstances, like whether they have children and how much support network they need, they again may not be helped by work for the dole. Finally, just to re-emphasise, work for the dole does nothing to address the issues in the larger economy that limit how low unemployment can go. So work for the dole is a fraud of a scheme. People thinking that it makes a good difference to unemployment by upskilling are sadly mistaken. If some people are taken up in jobs, others are dropped out because the number of the jobs overall isn't altered. The job guarantee scheme is the opposite of work for the dole in every way. The first thing the job guarantee does is address the macroeconomic conditions that stop the economy from having full employment. After that, the rest is a fait accompli, a given. The job guarantee will supply jobs where unemployed people are, or would like to be, it's their choice though. This is a win for everyone involved. It keeps communities strong, it keeps families intact, it keeps support networks as strong as possible, giving the scheme the best chance of helping society. The job guarantee fundamentally changes the whole employment and economic system, and for the first time fixes the moral failure, which is not letting people who want to have work have it. Work for the dole is a false hope, a flawed failure of a scheme. The job guarantee is what work for the dole dreams it could do. So a quick summary. The existing setup for the Australian economy cannot and will not provide full employment. This is true no matter the degree to which Australians are educated, skilled and motivated. It is macroeconomic conditions, particularly wage inflation conditions, that control what the unemployment rate is, not the skills or laziness of individual people. To enable a job guarantee, we need to come up with a system that avoids inflation issues at full employment. This is done by providing unemployed people, or underemployed, or even fully employed people, the opportunity to work at a fixed wage equal to the minimum wage with a ceiling of hours they can work. The work is set by submissions to local administrative bodies. If people are worried about paying for it, the job guarantee can be paid for by newly created money, not taxes, since it is unutilised capacity in the economy. The job guarantee should be the highest priority of a government that adopts modern monetary economics, because we are letting our fellow brothers and sisters and everyone in the community down if we don't work towards a system allowing a decent job and chance to contribute to everyone who wants to. Thank you for listening once again, and I hope now you can see how a job guarantee would work, how it can be paid for, and why we should have it. I think it's super important to let everyone know about this policy. Hopefully you will too. Please spread the word.